Welcome, everybody, this morning to the Safety Roundtable. First one of these, really excited about this. Going to be doing these every Wednesday morning from now on with a different topic every week. Although we will probably end up recycling back on some of the topics, but there'll certainly be a good 3 months worth of new topics every week for us to delve into. And the idea really is to connect with fellow safety and risk professionals, cultivate relationships, and collaborate to share what's working for ourselves with others, and see if we can help everybody to make the world a safer place, which is kind of what we're all in this business to do. So thank you for joining. Just quickly, what we're going to cover today, and this will be rough. This will be pretty much the structure for all of these. Is I'm going to give you sort of 10 minutes of thoughts on the topic. So today it'll be what are the challenges for safety and risk professionals in selling, in inverted commas, safety. Give you a bit of a framework to think about approaching this, so 3 steps, and then an example of how to use it with some learnings from stuff that I've seen over the years. And then the bulk of today's time, and I've allocated 45 minutes, if we go a bit over, that's fine, is to basically have an open discussion really around this topic. So what's working for you, whether you had success or whether you had learnings, things that didn't work, and let's have a good discussion and see if everybody can come away from this with some good thoughts on how to improve really. So just a quick bit of background to me, because some of you might not know me, I guess, potentially. So I am a bit of a geek when it comes to this topic of safety and risk. So every week I do 3 bits of content, I suppose, around these topics. So there's the roundtable, which is every Wednesday morning at 9. First one today, obviously. Every Saturday, I release a podcast, which is called the Safety and Risk Success Podcast. And I typically interview leaders in the field, whether that be, insurance companies or heads of safety or suppliers or thought leaders or whatever it might be. That comes out every Saturday. So I have some really good conversations there. And then on Fridays, I've just started also doing a newsletter on LinkedIn called This Week in Safety and Risk. So drawing together the news, what's happening, trends, and all that good stuff. So very much a geek on this topic. But where I really focus on in my day-to-day life is on slip safety. So the prevention of slips and falls. And in that realm, I've been involved in some very high-profile cases, such as this one where Stanley May, this gentleman, sadly slipped, banged the back of his head and passed away in a co-op store in Truro a few years ago. Myself and the business, which is called Slip Safety Services, we've won some awards. We partner with big organisations like AXA. We've got some quite good clients like Network Rail and CBRE, and you've probably may have come across me doing some IOSH stuff before. So enjoy doing all of that kind of stuff. But actually, what really excites us is working with clients and helping them to reduce their slip and fall risks. And we've been working over the years with about 5,000 sites. And at last calculation, we reckon we're saving about 30 million a year of slip and fall claim costs. So that's just a bit of context to me, so you can get the view of where I'm coming from. So let's think about this problem then, from your perspective as a safety professional, of how do we sell safety to the board, and why is that important? So the first thing to say is that, moving from left to right on the screen here, the majority of safety professionals don't have a budget. They're not in direct control of a budget. They can't decide where they're spending their money. So they need to get approval or agreement, or they need to collaborate with other people in the business to release the purse strings. So that itself is a problem. I did a survey probably about 18 months ago now, and I think it was something like 75% of safety professionals didn't have direct control over a budget. So that in itself is a problem. That means we need to persuade. We need to influence. We need to partner up with other people in the organization. But that brings another problem, which is, do these people really understand what's going on? Do they know why it's important to do X, Y, or Z? Or do they even potentially have a view, which hopefully nobody on this call has colleagues that think this, that safety isn't very important and we don't need to invest in safety. But there could be a blockage there around understanding. And so that's why it's really important to be able to speak the language of those people that we need to influence, that we need to convince to do things, see things from their perspective, and position what we want to achieve to drive up safety outcomes into something that they can see the return on investment for. The third problem that I see a lot is, and you'll have seen silo cartoons like this a lot, I'm sure, is silos. But what I think and what I see a lot is, in the context of this discussion we're having today, is not so much that we're talking about silos between, operations and safety and procurement and manufacturing or whatever it might be. In other words, those horizontal silos between business units, but it's something a bit more where we're talking about vertical silos. So we're talking about this. So what that means is, the board might be thinking to themselves and believing and saying, safety's our number one priority, which is, I know that's a bit of a bugbear of mine, but they might well be saying that. They might well be believing it. But actually what's happening in the real world on the shop floor is that value, are those beliefs, is that intention being actually lived and breathed and delivered in the real world, in the day-to-day of the business. And that's an interesting question. I'm just going to mute people because getting some interference. So that's the problem, really. How do we solve those problems? And what I've seen over the years is that there's a framework that can work quite well, which is all about 3 R's. So I'll run through that, and hopefully you might find this illuminating. So the first thing we need to do is recognize. So this is all about having a deeper understanding of what's really going on. So what I see a lot in my world is that people look at things a little bit too superficially, for example. And so if you don't go beyond that surface level and get a true understanding of really what's happening, it's quite difficult to be able to have that conversation with somebody to convince them that we need to make changes. The second thing is about reducing. So, right, we're all in the business of reducing risk and keeping people safer and preventing accidents. So this is all about working on the right inputs so that you get the right outputs, you get the right outcomes. And then record is the third R. So this is all about making sure that we're tracking what we're doing and we're measuring what is important, because sometimes we don't measure, sometimes we measure the wrong things. But measuring what's important and that's actually making a difference so that we can improve continuously. But also, it's about having the right evidence to defend claims. And quite often what I see is, from a claims perspective, people are doing good stuff, but they're not collecting the evidence in the right way. And so when it comes to trying to defend a claim, they're not in a very good position. So if we've got any two of these three, that's good, right? So if we're recognizing our risks and we're reducing them, that's good. If we're recognizing our risks and we're recording them, that's good. If we're reducing and recording, that's good. But actually, you're only going to go so far with any two of the three. So if we're recognizing and reducing, where's the proof? What's the saving? Can we defend the claims? These are the sorts of questions that the board are going to be asking, and you should therefore be asking yourself. If we're reducing and recording, are we improving in the right areas? So we might be reducing stuff, we might be improving, but are we doing the right things? How does this outcome truly help us? And if we can't recognize as well, we can't really answer those questions very well. And if we're recognizing and recording only, then, why aren't the numbers improving? Because we're recording numbers day after day, and we're just proving that we've got a problem, right? So again, in my world of slips and falls, if you look at the HC data every year that's put out about riddles and workplace ill health and all that stuff year after year after year after year, it's 30 to 35% is slips, trips, and falls, and that number doesn't change. So, we're recording it, we're recognizing it's at a surface level, but what are we doing to reduce it? More and more people coming in. It's great. Really appreciate you joining. So that's the 3Rs model, and the idea is if we can get all these three right, we've got the ammunition to go to the board and talk their language and give them what they need to do to unlock some funding to invest. So I'll give you an example of this in my world, in the world of slips and falls. So if we're recognizing and reducing, but we're not recording, we might have no slip testing, no monitoring, no cleaning records, so claims are getting paid out that shouldn't get paid out. If we're reducing and recording but not recognizing, we might hear things like, oh, we don't need slip testing, or we don't need larger floor mats, we'll put a yellow sign out and that's fine, or we're working on our safety culture and that will solve all of our problems. If we're recognizing and recording, as I said a minute ago, we're still seeing that large proportion of riddles year after year after year. What are we actually doing about it? So that's an example of where in the context of one sort of vertical of safety, you can see how these things marry up. So how would we do it in that sense? And I'm using this context because obviously this is what I know most about. So recognizing the risk around slips and falls is all around a model that we've produced called CHIMES, which is the 6 reasons that people slip: contamination, heal, individual, maintenance, environment, and surface. So we need to look at all those things, figure out where we are, figure out what the root causes are, and therefore what we can do about it. Reduce is all about taking quantifiable steps in this scenario of making floors safer, of making footwear safer, of improving footwear, of improving cleaning, of increasing the size of entrance matting, and there's myriad things we can do that we can measure, and therefore we can prove that we're doing when it comes to recording. And then there's things like slip testing, which you can use to record as well. So where I've seen that done successfully, we've seen sort of 57% plus reductions in accidents, injuries, and claims across all sorts of sectors. We've seen a client get a £65,000 reduction in their insurance premium straight away just by having done this. We've seen companies achieve £250,000 plus of cost savings on claims. So there's some good outcomes you can get from taking this approach in this vertical, in this field of slips and falls. So this is all about being able to put these points across to the board, right? So it's a big problem. It's worth solving because there's the costs, there's the risk, there's the injuries. We've recognised what we're doing. We've got the detailed inputs, not just outputs. We're using some scientific measurement and monitoring. We can quantify the improvement, and therefore we can track the ROI. And that means you can make a business case to the board. So you can use this 3R model in any area of safety. As I say, I'm a specialist in slips and falls, so this is what I know. But you could do exactly the same thing for manual handling, for any area of safety, basically. I believe, and start to put together a business case. If that floats your boat, if that's interesting, you'd like to take it a bit further, there's another resource I can recommend to you, which is this week's podcast episode, where I interviewed Marcus Kauke. He's a sales professional, but we talk about this concept called buyer safety, and basically how you as a safety and risk professional can use this concept of buyer safety, which basically means getting the person you're selling to, in inverted commas in this case, the board, to feel as if they're safer going on this journey with you than not. So that could be an interesting resource for you to have a listen to. So that's it from me in terms of what I was going to present. Really keen now to open up the floor and let's have a chat. So what did you think? What did you learn, if anything? Did you have any light bulb moments? Which of the 3Rs do you think you're using or not using now? And where do you think you could learn something from this and go and start implementing? And then what's worked for you in the past? How have you managed to engage with your board to unlock funding if you don't control a budget, or if you have managed to convince them to give you a budget, I'd be really interested to talk about that. And also some lessons and learning. So how have you learned what doesn't work in this field? So perhaps you've tried stuff and it hasn't worked, and you could share some of that, and we can all learn from it as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to see who's brave enough to open up the discussion.
Yes, I'm fairly brave. It's known to be fairly brave in the industry. My background, I was the health and safety director for a PLC. Number of years now, a health and safety consultant on my own in the big bad world of being on your own, which is daunting sometimes.
Yeah.
But before I left, we had a major change of culture, or tried to change of culture coming through from the board. I took great inspiration from a speaker that I saw at an IOSH conference about 3 or 4 years ago. I can't remember his name, but he spoke about the concept of 100% zero. So rather than paying 100% zero accidents, or whatever it may be, 100% zero was 100% responsibility for the health and safety of yourself and those around you. Zero excuses. And it really worked well by trying to implement that through the workforce. And how did I get the board on side? Well, they were going through a PLC, and the PLC was short of funds. So as you can imagine, trying to get that out of the purse strings of the board was very difficult. But it's all about how you come across and how you speak to people. And you need to make, in my opinion, we need to move away from the regulation subsection D, of the Regulation Act. That's not the way to do it. You need to bring on people on board, get hearts and minds. It's an old cliche that's used too often nowadays, but hearts and minds is what need to get on board. And also, I thought was something that was really, really helpful is to the shock treatment. Okay, because board of directors can sit there and it's thinking their ivy towers that they're doing fantastically well. But one, the perception is reality. How the managers feel to how the board is funding it. How do the workforce think the managers are responding to that? And how do the workforce think the workforce, how the managers think the workforce are doing? So doing these interactive surveys to try and find out what the perceptions of people were was a good tool to try and figure out what the strategy would be from there. So one thing I thought, as far as the board's concerned, is it's all about trying to manage the risk and to reduce the amount of costs or bad press from for the group. Now, I use it all the time in training I do, and I talk about the 2016 changes to the guidelines regarding beach and health safety and environmental food law. Now, if they don't sit up and understand, because a lot of people don't understand the differences between 2015, 2016, and the fines being up to 20 times to 30 times more than what before. You know, that to me makes the board go, wait a minute here, this is a big issue. You know, I could be facing, for not actually harming anybody, but putting people in the risk of harm, I could be facing a custodial sentence for a very minor thing because I'm putting a lot of people at risk. You know, and that's where people sit and go, wait a minute here, this is going to affect me directly here. Not just the company, not just the amount of money that's going to come out of the company, it's going to affect me as well individually. So if I don't do enough for that, then that's, they have to understand that I think in the past, it used to be the case that if you put a health and safety system in place, you could more or less be about quids in to see what you're going to be if a claim comes through. But since that change of guidelines, and that's what 5-6 years ago now, you know, they're now realising and saying, wait a minute here, you can't afford not to spend on safety, because if you do, the consequences up at the back of that are substantial. That's what I done, and it really worked well for the for getting these purse strings to go and take some money out of it.
Yeah.
So
great. Thanks, David. Yeah, I think it's really important to consider what's in it for them. So if you're trying to again, inverted commas, sell something, and this is something that Marcus and I talked about in this podcast interview, it's why does it matter to them? Because what I've found in safety is if you're trying to convince somebody at a site level, let's say you're talking to someone in a kitchen and you're trying to explain to them that they need to do X, Y, and Z to keep themselves safe, it's weird because most things in life, humans are very inherently selfish and we think about ourselves first. But when you're talking about safety, what I've found is it's better to say to that person, you're doing this to keep your colleagues safe. And that resonates more But when you're sort of removed from that process and you're talking to the board, you're quite right. It's about what could go wrong for them or what benefit could they get from doing this, and a mixture of that sort of scare tactics a little bit, but also the positive sides of risk. And we're going to cover that in another roundtable coming up. I think really work well. Scott, you've got your hand up.
Good morning. Just wanted to pick up on something that David mentioned at the end about this. How do you get across that shared responsibility? You mentioned about the fact that obviously, as health and safety professionals, we have a responsibility for the things that we sign up for.
Scott, do you want to just try turning your video off?
3 years and right.
Because you're not coming through very clearly, and sometimes if you turn your video off, the audio comes through a bit better.
Is that better?
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay. So I've got it.
Yeah.
Perfect. Let's pick up on what David said towards the end about getting across. You mentioned about you could be facing a custodial sentence. Obviously, if there's an incident that involves an investigation agency, they look at everybody from the top down. Who is involved? What did we do? What did we do? As a group, I'm just interested to see what people's thoughts are. Has that realization reached the board and the CEO that it's not just the health and safety officer that's going to get all the dots to take? You can't just pay them to sign off. There's a corporate responsibility that will pinpoint individuals, not just the organisation.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, what's everyone's view on that? Do you feel as if those changes in 2016, which are a good few years ago now, have actually got through to the boards? And have you seen a reaction and an improvement in their willingness to look at things in a bit more of a proactive sense? Has anybody got any insights on that? Come on, Gary, you're normally not quiet.
It's quite interesting. It's quite interesting, Christian.
Oh, you've muted yourself.
It's quite interesting to hear what David was saying. It's music to me. Music to me is about speaking a different language. Just before I go on to the different language, I think it's a good point that David will come up about the fines and prosecutions. However, you think the reality of being fined for a health and safety offence are extremely rare. But obviously, taking into account what you said, David, if we do get fined, like you say, it's about 20 times. So it's most probably a tolerable risk to the board, because they've got to consider all risks and all services that we deliver. But I'm just thinking, thinking about safety 1 and safety 2. We're launching a strategy in I work in a county council, and we're getting away from that traditional health and safety, the measurements that as fewer things possible go wrong, to more onto the fact of measuring when things go right. Mm-hmm. Because what we're dealing with humans, aren't we? We're dealing with humans, and if you keep telling people things go wrong, I think that's where our industry is. You think about it. Well, I'm sure we've all heard this. When something goes wrong, you get a health and safety officer doing an investigation, looking for evidence of things going wrong. Where the reality is more things go right than go wrong. And just the final thing on this, what I'd say, if you buy a car, you don't buy a car. The sales pattern is not what goes wrong on a car. It's what goes right. So why are we constantly referencing about things going wrong?
Yeah, it's a very good point. And actually, one of the things that Marcus and I talked about in this podcast was referencing that exact point, which is because I did an article, I don't know, a year ago, saying, it wasn't meant as, it was a bit tongue in cheek, but basically saying, here's why safety should be overseen by the sales director, because it's all about getting the inputs right and not being fixed on the outcome too much and various other things. And I wasn't really saying it, but it was just making a point. But Marcus said, I'd say the total opposite to that, because if you think about sales, a 3% success rate is considered quite good in many cases, whereas if you were a health and safety leader, and you said you were only keeping 3% of your staff safe at any one point in time, you'd be sacked on the spot. So actually, yeah, you're right. You know, we're actually delivering a 99.9% success rate, and let's talk about some of that stuff. I think you've definitely hit something there. Simon, did you have your hand up? Oh, we can't hear you. I can see you. The joys of Zoom. Try again. No. It's such a shame because I have a feeling this is the most insightful comment we're getting all morning, but we can't hear it. Do you want to type something in the chat, Simon, if you want, or is he going to, or try logging in and back again? Kevin, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, hiya, Christian. So just interesting listening to what you guys are saying, especially what David and Gary were saying there about making safety positive. I think it's something that we historically, as safety professionals, we've been labeled like you guys were saying, this is the regulation, you must do this. And I think that barriers are already up when we walk into boardrooms or we walk into meetings as a collective group. It's already, oh, here we go, here comes the safety person, and I think most of the time we're our own worst enemy when it comes to that. So what I've done in the past, I'm mainly oil and gas background, working in the Middle East, and not anymore, now back in the UK. But I've always tried to gain the trust of the people that I've been talking to first, and actually talk to them about things that matter and make safety personal. And it's quite difficult. And going in with the positives, like Gary was saying, rewarding the positives rather than focusing constantly on those negatives, and recognizing the progress that people have actually made, rather than going in with the stereotypical safety stick and then hitting people with it. And I don't know, I think make it more personal, get the guys to trust you and communicate with them, actually talk to them, get the board onto the shop floor. And I was on a rig once, and we had a great conversation with in a safety committee meeting. And I just opened it up to the floor, and I said to the team, I was like, guys, can we talk about how, what's the safety risks within your work area? And you give the people on the ground a voice to talk to the senior management. So there's not that barrier of that middle management, which is normally where the disconnect stops, the communication stops, sorry, and actually get people talking about safety and not just a slide deck or a statistic, because at the end of the day, nobody goes to work to get hurt. So there's got to be some barrier in place that actually, enables people to make decisions that it's okay to get hurt. So it's about that trust. And as I said, what I've done in the past is just talk to people honestly and try not to mask it around statistics, and try and bring it back to the human. And well, for me, that's how I've had success in the past with dealing with senior management and board level people. But I don't know if what everybody thinks about that, but happy to chat about it more.
Thanks, Kevin. I think you're spot on. It's a frustration I have that, if I put out I don't know, a LinkedIn post talking about the positive aspects of doing stuff versus the negative, the risks and the costs, and you get such fewer levels of such lower levels of interaction and stuff. So it is something I'm quite keen to try and change.
Yeah, Christian, just add into that though, but it does go back. I mean, I focus a lot on human behavior and the psychology of safety, and it does actually go back to how we're wired. And if you think about it, how we're actually wired as a human, when was the last time that you reward somebody for doing something right? But we're very, very, very good at focusing on, you've done something wrong, correct it. Yeah. Whereas having that mindset as a safety person of going out, and I'm sure we're all guilty of it, and most safety people are guilty, if you actually did an analysis of how many positive interactions you gave when you did a site walk on a construction site or a rig or whatever, I'm sure the negatives would massively outweigh the positives that we're giving. And I think, as I'm saying, sometimes we're our own worst enemy as a team of professionals.
Yeah.
And that's where we can really make a lot of difference in the industry. I personally feel.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Michelle, you've got your hand up. What did you want to?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I work for a company called BMT. So we have offices and therefore could be deemed very low risk, but we also work out in maritime. So we do dive in, we work out on rigs, we work out on vessels that have crashed. So we have the full spectrum of risk profiles. But yeah, I hit the same problems. And actually, to Kevin's point and the other points that have just been being made, we've just started introducing positive observations and putting out positive news feeds when people have basically acted the way we want them to act and called a stop work on something they deem was unsafe. And we're putting out those messages monthly and sending things through to people. So we've just started to make that change but I have made notes because those walkarounds, we do office and site walkarounds, and yeah, we have a checklist that is what's wrong, and there is no focus on this is brilliant, guys, keep up the good work. And I really, so one of the takeaways from this is very much turning that around, because I think people like to be told that they're doing a great job, and then that's probably going to fester and encourage other people to get that pat on the back and grow the right culture quicker than the negative approach. So yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I've got 2 young kids. I've got a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old, and particularly the 7-year-old, telling him off just does not work. And I often think we need to consider we're talking to kids a lot of the time when we're trying to influence people, because the human psychology is, what you've got as a 7-year-old is exactly the same as when you're older. You think you're more mature, but actually the same triggers will work probably.
Yeah, exactly. I've got young children similar age, and yeah, if you focus on their great behavior, they'll repeat it for more rewards.
Yeah, definitely. Maxine, hi, how are you?
Hi everyone. I wasn't able to get my video working, so just apologies for that. So I'm at Maxley. I work in the facilities management industry, and you're very right in that sometimes the boards don't pay attention until there has been an incident or an issue. One of the things that we do focus on is around prevention and trying to foster a culture of safety and behaviours. So a couple of examples, people are aware of near miss reporting. So we're always encouraging people to report near misses and be aware of the environments they're in. And then also what we do as well to foster that culture is safety moments at the beginning of meetings, and having a rotation basis where people talk about safety moments, learnings and lessons. And they're just some of the things that we use to foster and keep the level of awareness about safety on high on the agenda. So just wanted to share that and hope it helps people with solutioning.
Yeah, thanks, Maxine. And how out of interest, because I know you work for a very big business, but how, and I know you take safety seriously, how do you use that in a way of taking it up to the board if you find issues, or how would you sort of leverage all that good stuff that you're doing, and is that something that the board is kind of on board with, for want of a better term, already?
I have to say, so fortunately it runs from the top down and across the whole business. Safety is very important. It has a high profile within the business. However, in some experiences where sometimes the board are a bit reluctant, it is about providing the evidence, calling out, and just really consistently, as much as I think you're a pain in the arse, you're saving lives and preventing serious accidents. So, it is something that you just have to be persistent with, even though it's met sometimes with not a positive, with positive feedback.
The challenge is always that something that's prevented is hard to measure, right, or hard to prove. So if you've got a problem, if you're at the position where you've got a problem and you've got that history of, you know, manual handling issues or whatever type of safety issue, and you've got a lot of statistics and data, and then you can do something to reduce that, well, that's great. But if you're in a good place, but you want to go even better from good to great, which I'm sure is, you know, everybody on this call, you wouldn't be on this call if you weren't interested in going from good to great or from very good to great. It's how do you get that bit across, because actually they might well think, oh, we're doing all right, we don't need to do more. So that's always an interesting conversation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Simon, do you think your audio is working now?
Can you hear me, Mother?
Ah, there we go.
Sorry, I've had to switch microphones and so on. I'm not sure mine is going to be the most insightful comment, having heard some of the others that have been carrying on in the meantime. I did like Gary's look at the KPIs and so on, and accident stats for me are some of the worst sorts of data because they focus you in reactionary work, and you don't necessarily identify the underlying problems. With influencing health and safety, I've worked for charities, for small companies, national and multinational at various times. And it's actually the bigger companies that have got more of a buy-in to actually doing something about health and safety. And it's when you've got the small companies with limited workforce who have done it the way the boss has told them to do it, or they do their training and they go out and do the job, then you get quite often few accidents or even no accidents. And because the boss sees that as, we haven't got a problem, why should I spend on health and safety? And it's very difficult then to sort of say, well, if you spend £1 here, you'll get £9 back in productivity or whatever. You haven't got that data that he can see relevant to his or her company. So that's the problem I can see. But as I said, with the bigger companies, I actually found it a lot easier to get buy-in because you saw people were more engaged at all levels.
Yeah, but it's a very good point, and there is a big difference, you know, between a FTSE 100 and an SME. You know, I've got an SME, so that's my business, so I know what it's like running an SME versus being in a bigger business. And I think what I would say around, and I'm interested to hear other people's views around the smaller business, is that's where you've got to have stories and insights and examples from similarly sized businesses or businesses in the same kind of sector to make that point. And it's about humanizing and as I say, getting into the head of that person to figure out what makes them tick and how which benefit or which pain they want to either run towards or run away from to try to get them to act, I guess.
You were saying about sort of sometimes treating people like 7-year-olds. If you do, and I'm an ex-teacher as well, I sort of started off in the education. If you treat the MD like a 7-year-old, you are not going to get anywhere.
No, I don't think I mean treating them like a 7-year-old. I think what I mean is a bit of the psychology, but also the communication. I think sometimes even if people are very senior, you know, actually try and make things as clear and have as much clarity as possible. I think, I wouldn't start going in and wagging my finger at the MD of a business. I think that's never gonna get you very far. David, did you want to jump back in? Thanks, Simon.
Yes, thanks. Just I picked up a few points there, and I'm thinking about as far as trying to get the message across to individuals. In a lot of the training I do, I tend to talk about actions and consequences. So the actions that you take every day in life, you have to live with the consequences of these. Now, these actions could have the right consequences, or they could have the wrong consequences. So from an operative perspective, they have to know what their actions and consequences are going to be, and what the board level is going to be. They have to have the same thing for every action you take. Let's try and make it a positive consequence and not a negative consequence, because either way, you're going to have to live with what the consequences are going to be. The second thing that's going to be brought up about trying to increase the positives. So I had quite a lot of good success by changing the near miss culture. So near misses could be taken as being a positive thing or a negative thing. Most people take it as a negative thing because you think, oh God, you've got loads of near misses. That's wrong. It's not. That's the opposite. We all agree. The more near misses you've got, the better culture you've got, the more chances of an accident being resolved at the back of it. So I changed the reporting mechanism of near misses to positive interventions. That's what I call them. I call them positive interventions. So what I meant by that was I want to make sure that the workforce then can be empowered to positively intervene. Okay, if they see a hazard lying about and they're competent to fix it, then fix it. You don't have to report it, just move it. Okay, maybe report it as well. But what I'm saying is, you don't need. When I've done this, we've got thousands of things come through to me going, there was a pallet in the road there. Thanks for telling me, but just move it. If you're competent to move it, just move it. And from that perspective, I come to the conclusion very quickly about trying to change the culture of the company to try and do it without having too much finance involved in it as well. Now, just imagine if someone, for example, raised a positive intervention that was a really good thing, okay? And as management, we take it on board, we run with it, we change all the things, we put new processes in place, blah, 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 blah. But if we don't go back to the person who raised that, what does that person who raised it think? It thinks, what's the point in raising positive interventions because management do nothing about it whatsoever? Okay? So having that 100% feedback is crucial to do that. So I made it out my way to go back to every single person who raised every positive intervention and go back to me, listen, thanks very much for doing that. That was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to change that. What happens is he goes back into the canteen. He talks to his mates and say, wait a minute here. Put a positive intervention card in because management will take something to do with it. You know, you've got that full 100% feedback. If you don't do it, the culture you're trying to raise will be flattened right from the very start.
I like that. Yeah, that's really good. I like that. I like that. I'm conscious of time, guys. I'm just going to quickly, because we said 45 minutes, so people might be wanting to head off. I'm happy to stay for a bit longer, but I just wanted to say next week, the topic is a bit of a disruptive one, shall we say? So we're going to be talking about the 5 things that ambulance chaser personal injury lawyers don't want you to know. So this is all about how to protect yourself in the event of any claims. So I think that would be quite interesting and be good to come with some stories of where you successfully defended claims, but also where things have gone wrong. So I've got some interesting stories of where, things have happened and by any logic, they shouldn't be paying out the claim, but we end up paying it out, and some learnings from that. And then just quickly, and then I'm happy to stay for a little bit longer. If you'd like to have a chat to me at all about the slips and falls piece, thinking about these 3 R's in terms of slips and falls, then there's a website there, christianharris.online. You can book in a time and we can have a chat and see if there's anything that I can help you with when it comes to slips and falls. So if that's of interest, then feel free to book something in. So as I say, if it's 1:45 now, so if anybody has to go, then thank you for joining. Look forward to seeing you on future roundtables. But if people are happy to stay, I'm happy to stay for another 15 minutes and carry on the discussion. I've got a few hands up. Yusuf, do you want to come in because you've not spoken yet so far?
Hello, can you hear me, everyone?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Sorry, sorry, I'm cutting off my video. I'd like just to put a small comment. In fact, it's the first time I join you on this type of roundtable. I'm from the other side of the sea. I'm from France, so joining you guys.
Bienvenue.
Thank you. Thanks to my past experience, I used to work in a company where we used to work in asbestos treating and treating building materials and so on. I was only a team manager, but I worked closely with the EHS department and the safety officers as to correctly manage and take information up to our directors. It's really interesting that you guys, I'm gonna make only a general comment on what you were been talking all about. In fact, like you said, everyone, it's really, they treat sometimes safety officers like, oh, here comes the negative points of view, oh, here comes the bad comments and so on. The thing is, communication is really important to show everyone and the board, especially, the importance. And like you said, everyone, the positive point of view of everything that we are doing and you guys are doing. And my recent job now, I'm writing articles about safety, health at work, and so on. So I got really interested and invested all the experience in my articles now. But the thing is, in fact, they forget sometimes, like you said, everyone, that it's around the human health. It's about the people, and we used to use in the lab some dangerous products sometimes, and they forgot to put in place some safety measures, even though there's laws and guidelines, and sometimes you have to bend the laws, bend the conversation with the board in order to get the money out to put safety in place by telling them, like you said in your presentation, Christian, how they can gain from the measurement put in place. And I'm sorry to assist at the first meeting because I got a lot of information that can help me in the future to talk even to my new board of directors in order to put some things in place, although it's only office work and so on. But it was really insightful from everyone to hear you guys and to take notes about what you are saying and what you are confronting in your daily actions and daily tasks. The thing is, like everyone said, also again, it's how to take the conversation to the board. I work a lot in the. I like to focus a lot on the communication and the way that we communicate. You can bring a certain problem, a certain safety problem, a certain guideline to your board. But there's the way also how you present it. Like you said, everyone, like we, especially Kevin, I think, oh, he's the safety guy. He's gonna bring us the bad news, but you can transform this bad news into positive news, even though there are negativity or there's some action that we need to take and put in place to change this negativeness or this negativity to positivity. So we can, in fact, in our communication, our presentation, talk about everything, in fact, and then make the board more interested in our approach in order to open their pockets and bring out the money. So yeah, this is a small, just like comment that I would like to add on this whole meeting. So it was interesting and it was nice to join you guys.
Thanks, Yusuf. Really great to have you with us, and thanks for sharing your insights as well. Simon, you've got your hand up again.
Hi, yeah. I think it was Michelle earlier that was saying about doing the site walk rounds, and hopefully that's the management too, as well as health and safety doing those. A few years ago, I was working for, or one of the clients was National Infrastructure Manager company, and they had a new CEO who, at his first address to all the contractors and suppliers, said there's no such thing as a silly question. And that's something that everybody, whether you're health and safety or manager or whatever, needs to know. The example he gave was, if you see something that you don't think looks safe, ask the people that are doing it why they're doing it that way. It's not a silly question, because you'll learn if they're doing it the right way, and they'll learn if you've caught them out. He also said that any company, any individual on any site could stop work, and there would be no penalties for the company as a result, no delay, etc., etc. What it was that didn't change so much, because it was the middle managers, the project managers, who then were up in arms, and it was like, so they were what were called the permafrost. The ideas didn't reach down to the subsoil or reach up from the ground.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's no such thing as a silly question is really important, and anybody should be able to ask it and stop work accordingly if necessary.
Definitely. Yeah. Definitely. Good stuff. Thanks very much, Simon. Glad you got your mic sorted in the end. Kevin,
Been a great session.
yeah, thank you, Kevin. Go on, give us your last intervention, and then we'll probably call it a morning.
Okay, I just wanted to back off what Simon said there, and I think the asking them about the process, the procedure, okay, is very important. Okay, but when was the last time that when we as health and safety professionals took the procedure and actually verified if it's actually what the people on site do?
Yeah.
And then when we'll walk back out and we'll go, you're not following the procedure. But then the guys out in the field know a better way of actually doing it and a safe way of actually doing it, because we're not the electrician professional, for example. We know how to interact with people, make people safer from a logical point of view, but they might actually know a better way of running the system. And if it's their process, they own it, they're more likely to follow it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we forget quite a lot in our industry. And it's something that I always try to bring back to the table. So Simon, I think that was a cracking comment, and thank you for that.
Definitely. Great stuff. Well, look, thank you guys. Really enjoyed connecting with you all and having a chat with a few of you. Some great insights. I'm going to be circulating the recording of this. So you'll get a copy of that and you can refer back to it. Hopefully in future weeks, I'll figure out how to make the LinkedIn live work, and then it'll be on LinkedIn as well, but you can certainly get a recording of this anyway. Do join next week. If you've got value from this, do post about it on social or share it to your networks of people that you think would benefit from joining. Yeah, if you want to have a chat with me, click on that link, which I'll send you a copy of as well, and it'd be good to connect and have a one-to-one as well. So thanks very much, everybody. Really enjoyed it. I appreciate your help in making it a good interactive session, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one next week.